Well, this is a clinic that I have given many times over the years, but I stopped giving it after COVID because it's a two-part clinic. The first part would be photographs of common weathering patterns on freight cars, and the second half would be actual modeling tips on how to capture that look. And I would actually do weathering in front of the crowd and have models to pass around the room. Then COVID hit and everything became Zoom, and I have never gone back and photographed any of those parts of the clinic. So this is sort of a three-legged horse. It's missing the all-important second half. But let's
Right.
start. The idea is that you have some of these prototype modelers now who will model a car down to the last scratch or impairment in the paint, and that's something we all could emulate. But sometimes you only have photos of one side of a car, so it still helps to know what the common forms of weathering should be, so you can weather the other three sides. Let's start with the obvious fact that this is a fairly typical freight car. The paint is dulled. You can see some scratch marks where the door has been moved back and forth. And you can also even see, if you can see my cursor, where there's a difference in the shade of darkness between this part of the freight car on the far right and where uh, water has fallen off the roof and rolled down and somewhat washed the car. But here you have that door guide that acts as a gutter, and it's darker and dirtier. A minor point, but that's pretty common when you look closely at weathered freight cars. Now, obviously, uh, there are in this world pardon me, I got ahead of myself here. There are in this world, I'm going to have to start again. I jumped. No, here we go. Um, there are shiny cars. Here's a Conrail car that I photographed. Boy, this is, uh, I guess I'm going to have to be more cautious with my fingers here. Um, this is a Conrail car that I photographed in the early 80s. I don't know what it has a Pennsy look to it. So it may have originally been Pennsy, but it was bright and shiny like a new automobile in a showroom. These Wisconsin Central box cars I photographed when they were obviously fresh out of the paint shop. Remember that color because you're going to see a weathered version of those a little later in the program. And likewise, you occasionally see a train full of brand new from the factory tank cars, not even graffitied yet. But more normally, you see a car which has, at the very least, started to faded paint. Um, and that's what we're going to be looking at now. You've
It's
probably seen, pardon me?
just to comment on that last one, it's interesting to see the trucks are weathered, but
Well,
not the cars, or is that
the wheels are, of
yes.
course, unpainted, and they turn a very bright rusty red. I think even as you see new wheels being shipped,
Hmm.
they're almost always a bright rusty red.
Yeah.
All of you have probably seen models and maybe even the prototype of the famous red, white, and blue state of Maine cars that the Bangor and Aroostook had. Interestingly, I think the New Haven had some too, but this was, um, let's see, in 1981, and you can see that while the white still remains pretty good looking, both the blue and the red uh, they should have been as vivid as an American flag, are very much faded, um, and that's a difficult look to capture if you're starting with a car that's painted to look brand new. Fairly typically weathered and faded Burlington route boxcar. This would have been, I assume, one of their boxcar red cars, not one of their vivid bright red cars. You've probably seen photographs of Great Northern equipment when the Big Sky Blue paint scheme was brand new, and it was a vivid, brilliant, wonderful blue, but it pretty quickly dirtied up into what you're seeing here. Remember those Wisconsin Central cars we saw earlier that were so nice and shiny red? Well, this is what they came to look like really in just a few years. That red did not last long. It got chalky very fast. BN green tends to become a paler green. It must be that the whatever blue is in the paint must fade faster than the yellow paint. Here's a whole yard full of weathered tank cars to contrast with that shiny new one we saw earlier. You can see some look black, some look more gray. Here's a car that can't decide whether it's weathered or not. But that's what probably, if that car is still on the rails, it probably all looks like the right side of it looks in this picture. A uniform, kind of a charcoal gray rather than bright, shiny black. The Chicago Northwestern cars that they kept probably for grain service because of the 6-foot doors. You see that not only has the red paint, the boxcar red paint faded, but look at where the route of the 400s is on this one, and the white paint on the 400 slogan has started to not just fade, but even droop, stain due to, I assume, rain or other corrosive liquids down the side of the car. Here's a more clear example. This is a very easy effect to capture, by the way, with white pastels or chalks. Here's a kind of a famous example of fading paint. The Northwestern had quite a fleet of these beautiful green covered hoppers. They had several styles of covered hopper that they painted in this deep, rich green that was very attractive. But so there must have been something about the paint composition where in this case, it was the yellow that faded before the blue because they became blue after a while, as you can see here. Again, if you want to model this, there's almost no weathering you can do to turn a shiny out-of-the-box green covered hopper into blue. You have to start all over again and use paint of this color. There are limits to what you can do to add weathering to a car when the very color of the paint has changed. Now we're going to look at the kind of weathering that wheels and trucks go through, and we'll get to your point here, Greg, about those reddish-looking wheels under a brand new tank car. This is a car which has been around for a while. I took the photo because of that snubber on one spring, but you can see scratch marks. The ballast has been kicked up by the train and hitting this thing and causing marks and damage. The overall color is sort of a vaguely reddish, no longer black. This is kind of what we should all be aspiring to with our freight car trucks, since new trucks are as rare as new freight cars on any given train. Here is a hardly antique, but still experienced freight car where the trucks and wheels, and if you look carefully, the sides of the rail, and even to a certain extent, the ballast and ties in the background have all turned the same rusty red. Another example. Now here's a nice new car, but as you can see, once again, the wheels, in this case, the trucks are black, but the wheels are unpainted steel, and they were probably already rusty red before they were even installed on the car.
Note that the couplers are rusty red too.
I don't think couplers are supposed to be painted.
No,
They are not.
And because that could mask cracks or other defects. Yeah, you're right. And you know, people, there are outfits that make red wheels, but they're so uniformly red that you still need to weather them. Now here's an additional weathering factor for wheels. This is a solid bearing truck on a long retired car, but look at the wheel face. It's smudgy and with the grease grime that's been thrown up from the from the bearing, from the journal box. And so it's actually a texture. It's not just a color. Here's a close-up of the same car. It looks like you could scrape it off with a putty knife, and you probably could. This solid bearing truck of an even older car has an unusual splatter pattern for that lubricant that's gone onto the face of the wheel. Now we're going to look at rust and corrosion. This is the only Wabash car I ever photographed in my almost 50 years of railroad photography, and you can see just how much paint has been replaced with rust on the side of this car. In fact, most of the follow the flag emblem is disappeared, and it's just a rusty splotch. And the angle of the sun kind of highlights just how much rust there is on the side of this car. Somewhat newer car, but still there's rust, especially where you can see on the right of the car where the door scratches have rubbed off the paint and those spots have become rusty. But even on the doors themselves, there's plenty of rust. A Great Northern car with ample rust from a variety of spots, including the upper door guide on the for the plug door, and kind of the whole lower half of the car side has gotten plenty of rust. Look at the ladder to the roof of the car. It's got no running boards, but the full height ladder is still there. That all those boots scraping the side of the car apparently took their toll. A classic per diem car in its last years, probably under this paint scheme. And there's ample rust coming again up from the bottom on the lower half of the car. And fruit growers express you don't exactly grow hungry for fruit when you see that gunk coming down from the roof of the car. But that's a pretty common or a source of origin for rust and other corrosion in a car is from the roof down. We saw some examples from the bottom up, but roof down is pretty common. The famous Santa Fe logo, whatever kind of paint they used on it, rusted before almost anything else on the car. As you can see, this is one of those cars that's been modified to increase the interior height of the car. It might be in appliance service or something of that sort, but you can also see where the sliding door has caused plenty of paint loss on the right side of the car, and those spots are now deeply rusted.
It's interesting that the Santa Fe Circle was still present on the new part of the car.
Yeah, the newest metal,
Yeah.
which suggests the placement of that logo means they didn't just take a painted car and add the top to it. That logo was placed after that improvement was added. This is a Northern Pacific car, which I assume is in grain service, but possibly cement service. And you can, it would be cement service. And you can see how rusted the top of that car is because of the corrosive nature of cement, with plenty of kind of dowdy looking car sides in addition. Once again, your appetite for Pillsbury products is not enhanced by seeing all the rust, but in this case, look, the weld seam between each panel is the source, is the area of the rust, in addition to a few other rusty splotches. It looks almost like one panel might have been repainted at some point because it's got nothing on it, no rust at all. Obviously, this is no longer a Pillsbury car. In this case, the pattern we should be looking at is each post that holds up the running board has been a source of rust running down the side of the car. And that's a very common pattern on covered hoppers. You can also see that, again, the seams between panels are rusted. But the primary rust you see is from the posts that presumably are bolted or welded to the top of the covered hopper and is a source of rust. There's a car under all that rust somewhere. In this case, it's only the ribs that seem unrusted, and even some of them are. Another example where the posts holding up the running boards are obviously a source of rust here, but there's plenty of other sources, which suggests this might be a cement car because of the corrosive nature of the cement. The loads leak out onto the roof and start the corrosion process going. We'll see other examples of that in a little bit. In this particular case, every panel on this gondola is kind of a crazy effect of rust. Here's a close-up. It's as if somebody took a wire brush to this car, and there are a number of things that could cause that. And one of them might be if this car was holding metal shavings that had oil on them, because that can heat up and actually start to attack the exterior paint because of the heat. But I don't have any good explanation for this weathering pattern.
You can tell
I
where
guess
the floor is.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You can see there's no rust. It's rust from the inside, I think. It's not that the metal is rusted itself. It's that the loads being carried have caused this. The effect, I mentioned a wire brush. That might be a way to do it. Another example of where supports that are welded or bolted in place are the source of the vertical line of rust and corrosion heading down the side of a car, in this case, a tank car, the rounded shape. Eventually that rust line wears out about where the water would drip off rather than continuing down the side of the car. This is interesting, and it kind of contradicts my point because these rust streaks are on either side of the posts holding up the running board, not coming from the running board itself. And you can see that the rust streaks begin higher than the post, so they start higher up on the car. The interesting thing about this car is, again, how each panel, separated by a weld point, seems to have its own rust pattern. And again, the rust is heavier on the upper part of the car where the water is dripping down, or perhaps it's due to a corrosive load that leaked down to the car. But the lower part of the car is not as rusty because the water drips down rather than continuing down the side of the car. This car obviously has had some patching going on, but the rust is very complete on the upper portion. Here's a close-up of the same car. And you can see that the paint is crazed, a kind of an alligator skin effect down below. This suggests that this car was in a corrosive atmosphere, whatever, I don't know what load would be in it, but it suggests that the things that attack the paint from above actually attack the whole car to get that effect. So it was probably near a chemical plant where the air was thick with chemical fumes. Another example of a car where, well, the rust is pretty complete on this one, including on the lower half of the car. You can make out where the weld seams are, but the entire car is pretty well rusted. Another example where in this case, the rust seems to be between the posts holding the running board in place. And this would appear to be a grain car, so I don't think it's due to the corrosive nature of the load.
I noticed they painted the Cargill logo over the rust.
Yes, and it might be that either they wanted their name to look nice and didn't care about the rest of the car, or Cargill acquired the car and it was already looking like this.
It's money saving.
Well, it's that, but if you and again, it costs a lot of money to repaint a car, and maybe the
Right.
car was running out of its 40 years or whatever.
Couple shops I talked to said that's what they were doing to save money. They didn't want to repaint the entire car, so they would just do the logo.
Well, grain cars are actually pretty busy cars, so it's not just the expense, it's taking the car out of service. There is a close-up. You can see that that logo's been on there for a little while. You can see some streaks going down, probably the result of flour or whatever the load is in the car, creating a little staining. But there's definitely a pattern here, and it seems tied to the posts holding up the running board, or maybe the welded seams on the side of the car. I don't know why the paint should be stronger over the weld seam, but it might be. I have no possible explanation for this weathering. I'm going to increase the size of this image so you can get a better look at it. I don't know why that dotted pattern runs the entire length of the car.
Guy
There may
went
have been
to weather it and was testing his airbrush maybe.
Well, or someone was practicing with those Archer decal rivets, and they just decided to use this car as a test bed.
Paintball.
Paintball, yeah, that's a good one.
It wouldn't be. It looks like it's perforated. It wouldn't be difficult to model this, but this is frankly the only car I've ever seen that looks like this. So it kind of contradicts my advertised weathering pattern. This is a weathering event, but I can't really call it a pattern.
Looks like it might have been bracing on the inside that was welded on the inside.
Those might have been spot welds. Yep. And the heat might have been what damaged the paint on the exterior. Heavily weathered, obviously. Again, the upper half of the car. And the end, notice, is devoid of any such rust. Here's a car which has rust from top to bottom. But again, note that the end, and as you get into the car, into the end, there's no rust. But something obviously was pouring down the side of this car that caused the rust. This would not be a grain car. So it may have been a corrosive load again that was just piling up on the top of the car and then washed down by rain. In this particular case, the Chicago Northwestern added these metal extenders to the tops of their ore cars when they started to carry taconite rather than ore, because the capacity could handle the increased height of taconite. But those added panels have rusted when the base car is still looking pretty good in its green paint.
And I can't use that because it's got vitamin C in it.
Well, I don't think this car carried vitamin C. This is an interesting and in some cases funny car because again, this looks like leather or alligator skin. Now, one way that effect can occur, and those of you who have worked with wood and applied multiple coats of varnish know that if there's an incompatibility between the two coats of varnish, or a second coat is added before the first coat has set, this can happen with wood, but I've never seen it looking like this on metal other than this car.
And why not the sills?
Well, that's a good question too. When I gave this clinic and it was how to model this, I suggested maybe just paint the car this kind of brownish color and then take a paper towel and quickly just put an impress of the paper towel to get that look on it.
Or get a
It almost-
spattering
it almost-
airbrush.
It almost looks like the effect that you get when your car is dusty and you get a very light drizzle of rain.
Oh, yeah. The only other explanation I have is that this is a plastic freight car and somebody used Flocal paint. Now we're going to look at the special weathering issues associated with tank cars, because it's tank cars where you frequently see evidence that the load leaked as it was being put into the car, that they overdid it. And this is a very common form of weathering on tank cars. It can look shiny. The leaked load can look shinier than the other ends of the car, as in this instance. I don't have a good explanation for this, but it looks like it came under a load of talcum powder. This, someone wondered if this was a heated car, and maybe what we're seeing is a kind of a frost on the top of the car. Another example of spill loads, a couple generations of spill loads. The older spill loads become reddish, and the newest spill load is still dark and shiny. I think I've shown this particular picture before, this monster car, but you can see the evidence of a spill load on the side. This one looks like it was being loaded with tar and they had an incident of spilling the load, but I do not believe this is a tar load. Anyone got any ideas? Usually if the product is dark, they don't paint the car white, but
Could have been a repair.
Whatever it is, they did not cover the white square of information on the far end of the car.
or that was added later.
Yeah.
They may have had to redo, they probably had to redo that square.
Or they could
Hey, it
clean
looks-
it off.
To me, it looks like a bad repair job.
They just slapped the paint on the top and just maybe that was their only goal.
God.
It looks like almost a clean edge if you look at the left end of the car. It almost looks like it was masked. So I can't really call this a weathering pattern because I've never photographed another car that looks anything like that. Oddly enough, the spill load here looks slightly off to the side of the actual dome. This one not only spilled the load, but something happened on the side here to affect the paint.
You sure that isn't graffiti that they try to take off?
Well, that might be.
Or graffiti, they're trying to paint out graffiti, which they
it's-
stopped doing later down the road.
It's certainly a car from the graffiti era, that I know. Yeah, that might be. I don't think it would help to it's a graffiti artist who's into abstract art.
Impressionism.
This particular load is a kind of a brownish red, which makes me, I don't know, bromine has that, I think, but I don't know if too many other loads that have that unless it's paint.
Bromine
Close up.
would be in a much smaller tank car because of its weight.
Right. That's what makes me think this might be a load of paint. In this particular instance, the spill load was caustic enough to actually eat through the paint, and what you're seeing there is rusted metal. There's no paint at all where that load spilled. Same car. That might be a bromine car.
No,
'Cause it's-
tank is too large in diameter.
even that one is too large? Okay.
Yeah, bromine tank cars are tiny.
Well, I'm thinking this might also be paint, only because it's not just where they were loading the car. It must have been all over the top deck.
How about acid?
It could be an acid.
Well, we can see the hazmat placard pretty good on this one. Looks like 1830 to me.
1830. And
And that looks like a caustic placard.
yeah,
Hello, kitty cat.
a little bit of graffiti there. And here it is interfering with the safety information, and probably that should be replaced.
1830 sulfuric acid.
Ooh, well, that's the same color that we've seen then in other cars, sulfuric acid. And I don't know if that's the color of sulfuric acid or that's the color it takes when it reacts with paint.
Hazmat has it as, sulfuric acid with not more than 51% acid.
I just posted a picture to the chat of a bromine tank car.
We'll look at that in a bit. Same car. Just one little line of fresh leaked load, but obviously it's happened before. So you get kind of generations of leaks. You can kind of date them by the texture and color. Now here's a car which is entirely rusted on top, and yet that rust mark stops almost on an exact line. It is a technical fat car, but it's odd how the rust mark ends so evenly. I mean, it's not like it's masked or cut off on a perfectly straight line, but it's definitely got a spot where it ends.
It's funny how the L in animal is an upside down 7.
Yes.
I noticed that too.
You know why?
One
Because they-
consideration on some of these cars where you see the rusting at the top may be because of a temperature difference in what the car is carrying. If the car is not completely full, there's air in the top of the car.
Yep.
And that may react or cause a reaction that causes some of the rusting on the top.
And this says this is an external heated car, so it wouldn't. I guess it would might travel heated to get the load in, but then that heating would cool down and they'd reheat it to unload.
Yeah.
The reason they used a 7 for animal is they used up their L for technical. Here's a splatter going right down where the ladder is. I guess we've already guessed this might be sulfuric acid again. And again, here's where the load has eaten away into the metal of the car. Here's another example of where the metal of the car has been eaten away. This is the top of a tank car. And this does not fill you with a great deal of confidence, but it's this is the external shell, so it's not really what's keeping the liquid from spilling out, but it still doesn't, it's not a good look, even though it might be perfectly harmless. Same car. This is the advantage of going to Galesburg, where you have a wonderful bridge and you can take pictures directly overhead of the cars. Just another spill load. And again, this is another one where I'm a little confused as to what we're seeing. Are we looking at yellow primer that's been entirely, the black paint has been entirely removed? Or was it a yellow car and I don't know. Any ideas are welcomed, but you can see that the spill load is black. And a car that's generally rusted on its top, which we've already heard a possible explanation for that. The load may not fill the car. There might be air on the top. That is dicyclopent adiene. And what's the number there on the
2048.
2048?
48.
You know what it is?
Just what it says. DICYCLOPENTADIENE.
Mickey Mouse.
I have no idea what it is, but that's what's in the.
Well, I assume it's mighty tasty stuff.
Yeah.
We'll let you taste it before we do.
Cowards. So that concludes the tank car part. Now we're looking at spill loads on other cars. This Chicago Northwestern boxcar came under some white. It might be, I don't know, kaolin. It might be flour. Not sure, but it's, well, a heavy load of pigeons. Yeah. It's not, doesn't have a 6-foot door. So I don't think it's in grain service. I think that's a 7-foot door.
I've never seen that DF in that font before.
The damage free.
Yeah,
Yeah, so it's got
It's a different-
internal load restraints.
that's
But
a
what-
different decal from what I've ever seen.
Now this car, at first you might think, oh, it's a box car and it was carrying a white powder, because even look at the trucks. The interior of the car has white powder, the top of the car, and look at the trucks have white powder. But those, look more closely, those are hatches. I'm thinking kaolin because it comes from the Southern Railroad, but there might be other products that would do this. If they're hauling powder, you'd think they would not have doors of this kind, unless it was powder in bags that leaked.
It could also be a granule type powder thing.
I suppose. Definitely, and that's why it still has its running board, even though this picture was taken in the, post running board era. And I think cement loads probably caused this pattern of weathering on a BN, possibly former Northern Pacific covered hopper. And I assume spill loads caused this to happen to the side of this CN car. Actually, it's a Wisconsin Central car. We can see a little bit of the load borax, and we'll take their word for it that that's borax there on the top of this covered hopper. Someone has left the hatch open, which doesn't seem like a great idea.
Unless the car is empty.
You'd think they still wouldn't want standing water in the bottom of the car. But yeah.
The springs don't look terribly compressed.
It might be that this car was heading for the our rip track at Galesburg. It might have been that hatch may have malfunctioned and needed replacement. You can see spill load on this car, and you can also see how the galvanized metal has badly corroded. I don't know what that load is. That might be borax. Except they wouldn't use a trough on borax. Well, they did on the prior car, didn't they? Those are
Yep.
troughs.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
borax, the white powder.
Does look like 20 mule team to me.
Now we're going to look at dents and bumps. You can see that the end of this car is taken a bit of a blow. You can also see the effect of the vertical markings on the paint from the door. This is the same car we saw earlier, that Santa Fe car that had the height extension, and we're focusing now on the damage the door did, the scratching on the side of the car. Ditto for this UP boxcar, which has other interesting weathering, and but now we're looking at what what doors do, sliding doors, do to the side of a car. Very common. A dent in a tank car is not encountered very often, but here you go. You can see this is not, well, it's kind of a reverse dent. The top part of this boxcar is bulging out, which I suspect might have been an oops from a forklift operator. You can also see that the bottom part below the seam seems not to be bulging out. At least in many cases, the metal, if there were two panels on a boxcar separated by a welded or riveted seam, usually the metal on the bottom was thicker and maybe more able to withstand the bulge than the top metal.
Dave, I would guess on that car that because the end was bulged out, the damage must have come from inside. I would expect the load shifted
Right.
at
Yeah.
some
Shift.
point from either a sudden stop or too hard a shove.
A load shift, or again, something that a forklift operator did, but you know, it even looks like this panel, like this seam here for the ladder is
Yes.
bent at almost the same spot.
It is.
That's weird damage to the seam up there towards the roof.
Oh, here?
Yeah,
Yes. Yeah, the weld mark is, the weld seam has been bent.
well, that's a rivet.
Well, yeah, riveted seam has been bent.
Yeah,
Hopper cars, with the flood loading that they go through, they get their share of bulges and dents. Maybe not to the same extent as gondolas, but you can see slight evidence of little dents and bulges on this car. Now, I know this is trickier because some forms of Corten steel have this kind of dented look, brand new. But this might also be shifting loads, or again, an over-enthusiastic forklift jockey, who knows?
I think they call that oil canning.
Right. I think it's the oil canning. I agree. Oil canning. It's when it's even brand new, it has that look.
And I assume that's the effect of adding the side supports.
Well,
And then,
No, it's the heat. Go ahead.
It's the result of the welding.
Right, the welding.
okay.
You'll see
Not
it
an
on,
easy effect to capture.
you'll see
would
it
be-
on B-52s as well.
It would be easy to overdo this. I assume then that this is likely also oil
It
canning.
is. It is.
Yarmouth models made some box cars
Yep.
that had oil canning.
Yes, I remember. Now here you're seeing, these are the interior belt lines for load control. And you
Yeah,
can
that-
see, you can see some oddly spaced dents in the side of the car. Possibly shifted loads again, or a mistake in loading the car. And again, not an easy effect to capture. This I should have actually had in the spill load section, but you can see, well, maybe it's not so easy to see, but the running boards were dented. More so than they would have been if it was just an enormously big guy jumping up and down. You don't see too many dented covered hoppers, but I found this one. I don't know if that's enough to change the capacity of the car. I think I've shown this picture before. These were in the RIP track at Galesburg, waiting to be probably have those trough covers replaced. This is a former Chicago and Illinois Midland hopper that they used for coal. But when they were done using these 70-ton cars, some of them were purchased by Miller Compressing here in Milwaukee, and they were used in scrap service. So that's where you get these really outrageous bulges. In some case, usually with a bulge on a gondola, the ribs aren't bent, but in this case, even they are somewhat bent. But this would come from just extremely casual dropping of heavy loads of scrap into these cars, because they basically were used to move scrap around the Miller Compressing facility. Occasionally, I would see one on the Chicago Northwestern, but not often. They had reporting marks. In theory, I guess they were in the equipment official equipment register, but they were mostly abused right there at the Miller Compressing site.
Well, it's got a yellow dot.
Yeah, yeah. So it was prepared to be on the main. Whether it ever actually did go, I don't know. I did see some of these on the Chicago Northwestern south of Milwaukee, but probably still in captive service. Here is it's a fairly recent gondola, but it's also well dented from loads being dropped in. You can see again the ribs, the supporting ribs are doing their job, but in between those ribs, it's bulging out. There's ways to do this with care, using a soldering iron inside the car, and then once the plastic starts to look a little queasy, you take a stick or the end of a paintbrush, a wooden paintbrush, and start to push gently. But you've got to remember, you don't want to push out the side ribs. You want to push out what's between the ribs. And this has dents, but since it's in coil service, I'm thinking it might be that oil canning again.
It is.
Well, this isn't oil canning. This
Oh.
gondola took a hit and part of the top beam is missing. And this is also at Miller Compressing. This is a car that did not go out on the main. It was for very obvious reasons. But that's how rough they are on their cars.
Wow.
And this car has had some damage to its safety appliances, but I guess they must still pass FRA inspection. But if you,
Wow.
I mean, this was in mainline service. Now we're going to look at some other flat car decks, both metal and wood, and the kind of damage that they undergo. You know, they get these structural shapes welded onto them to hold a particular load, and then when that load is gone, someone torches them off, leaving these H and L and C shapes in the top of the car, and a rust pattern as well. Sometimes they don't weld it all the way down. Whoops. This, you can see some of those marks on this depressed center flat, but in this case, the load has been removed, but the structural shapes that held the load in place are still there. Presumably, either this is at the Bucyrus Erie plant in South Milwaukee, Wisconsin, either they are in charge of torching off or those, or the next recipient of the car will do it.
Or they're going to reuse the car.
It might be, but these would have been pretty load specific. And this is, well, yeah, it might be that that they got this car back and are going to use it to ship the same load all over again. Again, a depressed center car showing those same structural steel kind of ghost shapes, the C, H, and L shapes where they welded steel on to hold a load in place.
Oh.
Now we're going to look at some wood decks and the kind of damage they undergo, because you can see that age, but also the effect of some pretty heavy damage causes this effect on this old Pennsy flat car. I think by the time I photographed it, this might have been an idler car service, but it was still lettered for Pennsy and in interchange. Here's a much newer car, and you can see some small amount of damage to the wood deck, but not a great deal. By contrast, this car really has gone through significant damage. And I know from touring the Caterpillar plant in Peoria, this is a picture taken in Galesburg, so you see a lot of Peoria cars ending up here, that they load their Caterpillars by running them onto the car and then turning the car 90 degrees while on the car and tearing up the wood of the deck. So it's not that old a car, but the wood has taken a terrible beating on the sides. And I think that might be the cause, is the way it's loaded.
I've seen them do the same thing with tanks in Germany.
Well, it's the same effect. If you try and turn it while it's on the car, you're going to do this.
Oh, yeah. Tear 'em up.
Now we're approaching the end, you'll be relieved to hear. But now we're looking at road grime, especially as applied to car ends. And you can see that the road grime on this Milwaukee Road refrigerator car, it's actually a part of it's a tourist thing. It's not an active service, but you can see it exactly matches the wheel tread gauge. Happens a lot on tank cars because there's nothing to prevent what's the wheel mud from being thrown up on the end of the car.
Yep.
This is Mason City, by the way. And it's not just the ends of the car, but also the bottom of the car that gets mud around the trucks. We're still in Mason City.
You see those same kind of spray patterns on container cars.
Where there's no floor underneath to absorb it.
Yep.
And you see here on this covered hopper, remember what we were looking at, some rusted covered hoppers where no rust got on the inside part of the end? Well, that's not true of the mud. The mud gets there. This car was undergoing some repair, but you can see that some mud was thrown up from the wheels. Car roofs. Actually, most of these pictures I've already shown to the group. You might remember I did a Thursday Zoom on car coopering. So we'll run through this fairly quickly. This is not a weathering, this is overspray paint, but it's still an effect that can be modeled on a otherwise galvanized, unpainted roof. This roof has been much coopered, but also looks pretty grungy from age and corrosion. And here the Santa Fe logo is intact. This Union Pacific car, the roof shows a great deal of rust and corrosion, except for two panels, kind of above the logo. If you can see my cursor, kind of on the to the right of the car door on the roof, two panels seem to have been replaced. Now this is a painted galvanized roof, but the paint has started to chip away, and you can see the galvanized metal underneath it. There's also some rust spots that seem to be showing. Here we see not just rust spots, but also dents in the roof. And even a shifted load shouldn't cause dents in the roof. I think, once again, this is probably a forklift jockey who got a little overexcited. This, again, is overspray. This is not corrosion, but again, it's an effect that can be modeled. By the way, the way that I modeled that in the modeling portion of the clinic, which I'm not going to be giving, was to put cotton balls, taped cotton balls on the roof of the car, and then a little spray paint um, uh, captured that kind of irregular look to the overspray. Coopering, some kind of caulk to cooper the joints. They must have leaked. And you might remember this, whoever was in charge of the coopering, either they just forgot their caulk brush, or there was a hole so large that they used the brush to seal the hole. But you can also see here dents in the roof.
They went to lunch.
Yeah, and you came back and it was part of the car. So there's a detailed model. More thickly applied caulking, and rather nicely applied, but it's still caulking on this seam. You can see a material has been added. There's also a very modest amount of paint overspray on this car roof. And this hatch has been gooped up with something. Presumably it had some issue of leaking. Just a few words about wooden cars, because they weather and age differently than metal cars. You can see these are work train cars, but the paint is still adhering to the vertical and diagonal braces on the side of this single sheath car, but the wood looks like the paint has simply gone into the wood as a sort of stain, and it's no longer even really paint except for this side of the car. This car was in a deadline in Galesburg, but it's a former Northern Pacific car. And you can see some slats of wood essentially have no paint whatever on them anymore. Others have a bit, but it's almost slat by slat. Did you see that email we got today of the fellow who built the Swift reefer?
Yeah.
I think using individual slats of styrene.
Yeah.
Birch Tolman.
You would almost need an effect like that if you wanted to capture this look. Yeah, black and white shot, but you can still see that with wood cars, it's as much a matter of texture as color. And these retired Southern Pacific Gons, which were probably in sugar beet service, you can see the gaps between the horizontal wooden sheathing are starting to show as the wood starts to deteriorate. Not all gondola interiors should look like this. And again, this may not be a pattern, but I guess if you leave a gondola alone long enough, it might end up looking like this. And I did not go into this kind of weathering on a car which obviously was being routed without regard to clearances. But with that final thought, I've reached the end of my program.
All right. Very nice, Dave. Thanks
Yep,
very
good
much.
one. Nice done. Now we want to see a model with that paintbrush on it.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's the challenge for Ron's Model Railroad Group.
Yeah.
You know,
Dave,
I don't- Go ahead.
okay, Dave, there's one thing I do with some of my reefer cars, wood reefer cars. Before I weather it, I'll tape off some of the wood, mask it off. And it looks like when you're done that it's wood that had been repaired and repainted and put back on the car.
Yeah, I've seen that look, and it's very effective.
Yeah, and it's very easy to do.
Excellent. Well, David, thank you very much. I think we'll have Doug next week, so that'll be good too. And David, is it okay to publish the recording of this?
I have no problem. I think I took every single picture that appears, so I don't have any, fear of someone
Right.
yelling at me. They might, yell at incorrect information, but I'm accustomed to that.
Yeah, right.
Mhm.
If you want, I can share that picture of the
Oh,
bromine
yes.
tank car.
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
yeah, just let's make this complete by showing that.
Can you see
There's a
that?
bromine
Okay.
car. Yeah,
Oh, that's
That's how
bromide.
small they are. They are tiny.
Just a little guy.
so there's your excuse. Even if you're in HO, you can still get Micro Trains cars and run them on your layout.
It's got to change the wheels.
Creative.
Very good.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
You're welcome. And in the chat, I also looked up the dicyclopentadine car. It's a white waxy solid with camphor-like smell, used extensively in making resins for paints, inks, adhesives, and high-impact plastics for automotive and construction parts.
Ah,
Hmm.
so not recommended for ingestion.
Now you know.
Right.
Until tomorrow.
Until tomorrow.
Rest of the
Yeah.
story.
I've
What
slept
time is-
since then.
If we're lucky, the quiz will be multiple choice.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everybody. Thanks again, David. And we will see you guys next week. I believe it'll be Doug, but if not, I'll let you know. Also, if anybody wants to present here in January or February, just let me know and I will get you on your schedule. Have
Excellent
a great Thursday.
presentation tonight.
care, guys.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Night,
nice job.
everyone.
Good one.
Night,
Good
everybody.
night.
Good
Good
night.
night, everybody.